And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Judge Adrian. Here. Ms. Yarham.
Here.
Judge McClellan.
Here.
Ms. Gibbons.
Here.
Mr. Cross.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any amendments on the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I abstain. Wasn't here. Old business. Put forward by way of findings. We made we need
I would like to thank our ladies for helping us streamline our findings. I think they're doing a great job with it. And, you know, just, I know we contributed, but they're doing a yeoman's job on it.
You're not lying. Well, welcome to my household. I think, one of the things, as we talk today, I hope that we can kind of narrow down a little bit where we have some duplicity. Like, there's some things that I think we're getting, I personally am kind of want to make sure that we're highlighting things that are most important, that are going to have the biggest impact on reducing violence in our community. I did want to bring up something that I think is relevant for the committee as we're making these recommendations. If I can, are you okay with that? Okay. So I think as we've been talking about so many of the programs and the court, I think, and many of our community providers are moving in the right direction. One of the things that I think is relevant to bring up here is the reduction in our reclaim that we have for this next upcoming fiscal year, which starts July 1st. For any of those that have paid close attention to reclaim, we have had some significant carryover for the last few fiscal years, and we have been able to really work with our community providers. This is how we have funded our 20 grassroots agencies, and those grassroots agencies are doing anything from mentoring, skills development, arts programming, job obtainment, specialized skills, trying to think of what else. We just have a bunch of like job-related, specialized, pro-social, positive youth development activities that we've funded.
people who are
Yes.
outline acronym.
Oh, you keep asking me to do that. You rolled it out last. It's reasonable. I mean, I don't know that the acronym will mean anything to anybody, but it is state funding that is given to each county based on, so there's a bunch of funding streams with reclaim. So one is you get a base amount of money. There's a few counties that have the highest felony adjudications that get targeted reclaim. And then there's variable, and variable is based on the state formula that says you're likely to have this many felony adjudications. Based on that many felony adjudications, we anticipate your county is going to use up this many bed days. And what the state is trying to do is to fund local, effective, community-based programs to keep kids from going further into the youth justice system or being placed in ODYS. So when COVID hit, we did get a surplus of reclaim funding. It carried over. We used that carryover in the last 2 years to fund many of our grassroots agencies, get a lot of programs off the ground. This year, we're looking at a $2.8 million reduction. So we've reached out to many of our agencies. Sorry, Jen. But, you know, we've basically had to make a $2.8 million reduction in programming across all of our programs. We're
About
also.
how many programs are affected, you know, generally, not specific, approximately.
At least 10 to, well, it's more than 10. It's probably between 10 and 20. I mean, some just got reductions, some we ended up having to eliminate the program altogether. But, you know, it's, at this point in time, we had to make the decision to remove home detention. So we're going to need to move home detention into HHS, general funds from the county. That is going to be necessary for us. The reason we made that decision is it's one group that we think is the appropriate one to move off of. Everybody else that's doing the programming is doing like interventions, direct services to youth, but we will we'll be asking county to help us fund home detention. The other thing is just cuts in the numbers of youth that can be served the next year. Eliminations of services that we felt would have the least impact on youth specifically, but that means next year, with everything that we're talking about, we do not have extra funding to put into these programs.
Okay, so, as they said in the old Dodge commercials, you know, this changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of the things that we were looking at, asking us to do, called for increases in funding across the board. Get more money. Most impactful.
Yeah.
And based upon this new information, not only are we not able to ask them anything new, we've got to figure out what to tell them about, what to keep.
Yeah.
That you have been doing previously.
I think that's where some of my recommendations in here moved from, you know, to supplement the reclaim funding. So like, we are able to keep programs afloat, but, you know, there's going to be reductions. So the ask would be to supplement, to provide funding like Credible Messengers. We have a pilot for that we're starting up. That's narrowly funded. Continuing to expand restorative justice and really truly get that off the ground. These are things that we know help young people stay away from the youth justice system. Alternative to detention programs. Those are things that keep kids out of our detention center. Those are, you know.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Oh, Judge. So, that's okay. You don't normally walk around with a microphone, so.
No.
So, you know, restorative justice programs, alternatives to detention, those are the places we've had to make some reductions in funding this year. And those were programs we were excited about. We felt like were effective and meaningful. I mean, everything is having some type of reduction in it. So I don't think it changes the course drastically. I think it's just us getting kind of more specific about what is the capacity we would like to get at and what are the funding that we'd like to get at, and just putting out there, you know, we have a home detention unit, which is about $850,000 that we are going to have to request that the county put back onto HHS. So.
I had asked each of you if you could to identify the top 3 things
Yeah.
that you would like to see us push to the top of the recommendations that we made to the county council for them to share with the county exec. And for me, I'm wrecked, because I think the things that I wanted to do are probably not. Yeah, not gonna make it, yeah.
So we all understand that there's gonna be definitely some cuts. With our recommendation, do we still put our top recommendations in there, but still keep the other recommendations just in case down the road something comes up, the funding happen to swing around, a miracle come out of the sky or something, that we still have it on the radar? Because if we don't do it, then I think they will never look at it. I mean, that's just, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying it correctly. My biggest concern throughout this was that I didn't want us to do the work that we were doing and end up with a report that ended up just being just another report that gathered dust on a shelf. I think that what we are shooting at trying to do is to identify those things that are really doable. And given the fiscal restraints that are being put on us, or not on us, but on the court and on the county. But, you know, whereas we might have looked at 10 things initially, we might only be looking at 3. You know, as sad as that is. And to be frank with you, Bridget, I think we're going to have to depend in large measure on some of the things that you're more intimately connected to than the rest of us, because of the fact that you really know where the bones are buried. Okay. So, but I'm sort of hard pressed now to I guess we can still go through and identify the things that everybody thought we were going to be talking about, and then we can see whether, I don't even know if that's a useful exercise. I think what the useful exercise really is for you to lay out the places where the money is most likely to make a difference. You know, because the rest of this is all falls into the category of allemotionary things that we would like to see happen, but that there's a high probability, given the current state of politics, both at the national and state level, that it's not going to happen. So there are a lot of people in government now that really don't have an empathy gene.
I do think there's recommendations we can talk about that right now are not cost added, that I think are really important for reducing or improving outcomes for kids that come into contact with the youth justice system. One effort that is underway that I think if county council our county leadership would get behind is the Care First Cuyahoga. I think that's an important effort. And that is not asking for money today. That is, we are asking for support for all youth-serving entities across the county. That means like DCFS, Juvenile Court, our mental health partners, Adams Board, Board of Developmental Disabilities, FCFC, and if I'm missing any educational services and systems, get together and participate with us for Care First Cuyahoga. That is not today, that is not a fiscal ask. Now, that is going to be about 6 to 9 month planning phase where we are going to create at the end of it a continuum of care for young people to divert them away from the youth justice system. It's about putting up prevention, better service coordination, and diversion services. And part of the benefit of that, if we get the buy-in from the entire county, is we're having department directors get together and also identify where spending might be out of whack, where we might be allocating too much in one area. We can take some funding from there and put into some more intentional. The goal of it is to do gap analysis, resource mapping, and also looking at where we might fiscally be able to shave off a couple dollars and just use our dollars better. So that is an initiative that isn't asking for money today. I would ask that the county consider, I personally would put this in there, the county, once the CFC is built and we have a continuum of care, that the county support that. And the goal of that is that if there's kids in the educational system, I know the PD's office did talk about the mental health, the trauma that young people are experiencing in the, the testimonials that they gave. These are kids with a lot of complex issues. So we shouldn't be criminalizing trauma or educational learning issues or family issues. We should be trying to divert them into the right community-based organizations that are going to be more cost-effective than the court intervening. So that's one really high on my priority list. The other is, alternative to detention, safe respite. Right now, we don't have a lot of options for alternatives from detention. As everyone knows, to get into our detention center, the admission criteria is pretty high. It's a felony 1 or a felony 2. But there are many kids that come across law enforcement due to a delinquency matter that don't necessarily have a safe space, or parents that are refusing to allow them back in, no relatives willing to take them, that if we could put some support and efforts to, healing centers, more alternative to detention options for those young people, whether they're group homes or respite homes. We have pretty much maximized what we can put into that. But I will say these are not just juvenile court kids. These are kids that your team deals with. Significant mental health issues, family-related issues. We're seeing a lot of kids with autism spectrum disorder. These are kids that police, prosecutors, the court do not want to see in the detention center, but sometimes they end up either in detention because of no other option, or they're in Jane and Hunter's lobby. Thanks, that was a big word I was looking for. So respite, alternatives, and then the other major one for us would be if we really want to do juvenile justice work the right way, we've got to get our probation officers who are carrying caseload sizes that they can't case manage effectively. If you're talking about 70% of the kids on probation are on for a felony level offense, and we're talking about some of the pictures that our probation officers were here articulating, these are people that should be spending a lot of time case managing, supporting, linking to services within a community, coaching, incentivizing, helping them work towards goals on probation, helping those kids move off probation and back into healthy, pro-social, developmentally appropriate opportunities. So we would ask, from the court, we get those probation caseload sizes closer to 20, which is not ideal, but it's a heck of a lot better than 30, 31, 32 kids. So that would be a large ask, and then that would allow our probation officers to spend more individualized time with young people. And then just others would be, the recommendation, we talked about credible messengers, we talked about, restorative justice, supporting those efforts, bringing together funding across numerous entities. There's funding in education, there's funding at DCFS, there's funding across mental health. I think this is where we can ask people to kind of think about where there might be redundancies and how we can bring that together to divert kids away from the youth justice system. In addition to helping us with workforce development. Part of the reason we had to take some things off of the plan is we just can't get the capacity in these programs. So I can't ask the state to allocate dollars to a position we can't hire in those community-based therapists. Those are hard jobs, so those are just a couple of the things I was thinking would be a priority.
What do you see as your ability to fill, because as I recall, you had about 15 vacant probation officer positions, is that right?
15 additional we'd be asking for.
15 additional. Okay, so
Right now, we're close to our,
capacity.
filling our capacity, yeah.
So, so what is your capacity to hire probation officers? I mean, is it not as bad as therapists, I would think?
It's not as bad as getting those master's level degree therapists who want to, yeah, want to go, yeah, you got your master's degree, now go into homes in the community, and it's a tougher job. It is, it's odd hours, it's not traditional hours, you're on call 24/7 for most of those positions.
They're highly effective. You remove the barrier of not being able to access the family, but you're working nights, you're working weekends, you're working after parents get out of work. So, especially for people with a family, it's become less attractive. There's still those people that are true, family therapists, but not as many as there were.
So I spoke up on this the last time. I don't know who to get that information on some of the positions that are needed. I said last meeting that I was gonna talk to, and I did speak to some of the fraternities, fraternities and sororities. I spoke to a couple of leaders. They just needed the information what positions are needed, who do they need to come to, because they have a vast distribution area that they was gonna just send out a blast. And we might not get a lot, but we don't know until we try. If I can just get that information, they already promised me that they would send it out
Yeah.
to all the sororities and the fraternities. And you got people that are coming out of universities, some of them might need to get a job, and they might have that fire to,
Well, I can, it's all on our website, our juvenile court website. I can send
so
you the
tell them to
link
go
for
to the
post.
juvenile
Yeah.
court website.
And then Applewood and all of our behavioral health agencies post their jobs there. Indeed.
By job, it would give you what types of job categories.
Okay, I didn't know where to even
We'll
tell them
send
to
it to you.
start. Okay, if you send that to me.
We will send it to you.
Okay,
Yep.
and like I say, they're waiting to get that information, and I just wasn't educated enough to tell them where to go and look.
Okay.
Okay. So if I was gonna prioritize what we can do, I think that, just based on what you're telling me now, that we really ought to be taking a look at the planning that needs to be done overall first. That is, try to get everybody who's got a piece of this around the table.
Yeah.
To figure out how they can do more with less, because that's what we're talking about. And how they can fill in some of the gaps that we've identified, and give them what I consider now our report to be a roadmap, as opposed to, an actual plan, because the things that we want to do, for the most part, are not things that are not things that they're going to be able to do readily without the money that would take to actually get them done. So if we start with trying to get the money together to get you some more probation officers, that's a good start. That's after, I think that's one of the first things after we get people to the table to talk about the overall picture. But I think that the top thing on top of that is to give you the money in order to get more probation officers, to lower your caseloads, to have more contact with kids. And then, if I understand you correctly, and it was a place that I was going to go to, this whole business about trying to get some alternatives to detention was going to be my third thing of the links that I was going through looking at the list. I don't know, Bob, what were you looking at?
Well, obviously, replacing the funding is the first thing, it seems to me. Gotta have somewhere for these kids to go. I agree, probation for sure, early intervention, that's what you're, to avoid them getting into the system in the first place, so I agree.
And I'll just add, because of the way, we've funded programs at the court, you know, we really do not request much of the county historically. Reclaim has been pretty consistent in supporting all youth programs with the exception of residential beds, which we're in need of, you know, funding for, and our local community diversion programs, which is not it's not a high ask, but when, you know, a community as large as ours, a county as large as ours has these sort of ups and downs with funding, it definitely makes funding difficult to sustain. So we have figured out how to fund programs, but, you know, we're at the table today. I think we've got a lot of energy and around addressing gun violence, and I think doing these kinds of programs and just pouring a little bit of support into them will go a long way to save the county a lot of money. If you don't have kids staying in the detention center, that's tremendous reduction on costs for overtime, food, beds. A night in detention really disrupts kids' long-term educational success, so that can be destabilizing for young people and their families, which then ends up costing a lot more money and resources down the road. Just putting the prevention services up front. We talk about kids, you know, and I think some of the solutions to juvenile justice don't lay at the door of the juvenile justice center. They're also in some of these other youth serving programs, helping, you know, schools have the supports that they need to not send kids forward into official filings for educational issues, mental health issues. So I know it's a big ask, but I think, you know, supplement what we're not getting in Reclaim and help us to continue the work we've been doing with program. It is cost savings, the less kids that come into the youth justice system, kids that don't end up in residential, kids that don't end up in DYS, kids that don't end up in on probation, really can cost or can save taxpayers significant dollars. So it's the year we're going to ask for some support with programming.
Okay.
Anything else?
So our choice really is to try to see which of these things are going to bubble to the top at this point, as far as the ask is concerned. If we do you have in mind about how many dollars we're talking about with regard to supplanting the money that you're going to lose from Reclaim?
I could get that. I think, all right, well, let me think. I also would add that if we support alternatives to detention, that's not just juvenile court kids. Those are multi-system kids. Those are DCFS kids, those are juvenile court kids. So in the ballpark of what we originally threw out there, you know, was $74,000 for, you know, just respite beds for a very small number of kids. If we wanted to go big, we could go much larger than that, up to $500,000. But I'm cautious to give you an exact number. I will work on trying to get you an exact number. Did you want to say something?
But some of the, you know, reasons why the funding's being cut, I think some of the things that we looked at for recommendations might help bring that money back to this community at some point. I mean, looking at a CCF versus an ODYS commitment, right? Looking at if we could have more front-end diversion programming. I think there's things that we could do that would help us, because one of the reasons, the biggest issue we have, right, is the prevalence of guns in this community is resulting in more kids going to ODYS. And so when we look at violence interrupters and credible messengers and those things that will help our kids recognize the long-term consequences of gun violence, you know, those incidents go down.
Yeah.
The Reclaim comes back, you have fewer kids going to ODYS. And so I think there are some things that we've already been looking at that will help put our kids in a less restrictive environment than ODYS,
Right.
which then also helps our case long-term with state Reclaim.
Yeah.
Were you at the press conference this morning that the county exec had?
No.
About gun violence? I wasn't either. So hoping that maybe.
So I do have a dollar amount on the FIOs. It's $1.2 million for the probation officers.
Okay.
Alternative to detention, let's say we invested $500,000 for respites, group homes, therapeutic supports. And again, these are only the kids that really need a safe space to be. This is not about net widening. This is about supporting the loss of services and keeping those kids out of the youth justice system. If that was $500,000, it's like 1.7 is the dollar amount there. I'd have to get back to you on some of the other costs for, expanding some of the supports that we're trying to do. Like I said, we're starting off a pilot with Credible Messenger, so I wouldn't want to go too big on that, because sometimes programs are slow to start. So I'll get back around on that one.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about that because, I'm hearing things out of Washington that are trashing credible messengers. I can't understand how they can not see the value in that.
Sometimes when people are a little further removed from it, they don't really see the impact, right? And we have kids that no matter how hard we try to explain things to them, they still don't understand that, like, you take a picture holding a gun and here's the long-term consequences. And sometimes somebody that's walked in those shoes can help them understand a lot differently than, the therapist or their mom.
Yeah. It's not rocket science.
Back to the empathy point you made earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that we should, stick to some of the other recommendations we talked about. It sounds like, and I'm not really sure where the other committee is going to go, if we want to just leave some of the recommendations that we had on gun violence off or leave it in. I don't know. I'm not really sure which direction that's going to go, but so maybe we can just trim the fat on ours a little bit and get to the things that are most proximal that we feel like is going to be beneficial. But I do think there's an important part that we had talked about, which was the language matters section. I don't want to carve that out. I think it's important that we as a community and leaders in our community and adults in our community utilize language about young people that doesn't vilify them. I still really want to stick to that because I think that, what we say drives how we feel drives how we think, drives how we behave. And as a community, if we think kids are the worst of the worst, we're going to be stifled in fear and not act like responsible adults who are tasked with redirecting, supporting, and holding them accountable and doing some of those things all at the exact same time. It also leads to, ineffective strategies with dealing with youth delinquency that are that cost more and get poor outcomes. So I think our group has been pretty intentional about using community-based services, supporting these communities. We have a lot of data at the court, and I just talked to some folks in law enforcement this week about their data. We should be looking at the communities that are most impacted by gun violence and thinking about what supports, how do we take what we're already funding and really try to put that into those communities that are in most need to help uplift some of those kids, get them the resources and supports that they have that we can build in, and just follow the data. I know we had talked about the data, but we are rich in data. We do have a lot that can be helpful. And so we should really look at how do we really target those specific communities. The other thing I hate to add, I'm going to add, but over and over again, jobs, that's not new. There are people out there that have businesses. There are, companies and manufacturers and trade unions that are looking for young people to have a specialized trade. I still think we should be working towards helping kids get out of the youth justice system through attaining skills and that will take them into good paying jobs that they can get health insurance. That's a really easy deterrent to delinquency, getting them jobs.
So I got a question. Once again, I hear some of these good programs that I know some people don't like prevention. They're reactionary, but a lot of us been in this business know that prevention does work. But for me, how do we get the information to merge some of these groups? So prime example, we spoke about zip codes, 44112, which is like East Cleveland. I know personally, because like I say, I coach at Shaw. And believe me, that's one of the targeted areas. And they just opened up a rec center. So if you needed a facility, there's a brand new facility that's open. They have another facility that's already been operative next to it almost. And it's like, they don't know about these programs that's going on. They have their own programs, but remember I spoke about this before, sometimes we have to work together. And when I say we, all the community, how do we get that information to them? Or the people that's running it from, I don't know if it's the county or who, that these resources are out there. I mentioned that to CASA about with the city. And I gave one of the representatives the director of recreation number so that they could communicate. So, I don't want to be in the middle of it all. I don't mind helping with it. But instead of coming through me, they could talk to each other. And they got resources. Both of them had resources. But if they put the resources together, I think it would help. So I know these facilities are there in East Cleveland. I just don't think that they're working together. And I'm not saying anything negative about it. I just don't think they know. What do we do?
Well, I think we've got to come back to what do we do, because we've got a limited amount of time to try to pull this together and try to decide what we're going to actually put out there. As you take a look at the report as a whole that we've put together so far, did you have any concerns about any of the parts of it that we have already? Because or the order of things, or, any part of it.
We did talk about brevity. If we could just get a little bit shorter for the readers. Most people are going to be wanting to get to the findings and the recommendations. So I'd like for us to work on trimming all of that down. So many of the links we can just pop in. People, if they want to see, what presentation, Public Defender's Office provided, Gabrielle Celeste provided, they could just click on the video. We can just pull out quick highlights. I think it's important people understand the recommendations and the rationale and just get straight to it. I think that would be important.
Well, I think you've already done a Herculean job to get that done. And I don't know, do you think that even after you got that done, that there's still a lot more fat that needs to be trimmed?
What do you think?
The place maybe we could consolidate is the summary section of the committee meetings. I don't know if there's a way to make them even shorter and then just have the link so you can click to the full summary.
Link to them or put them on as an appendix.
Yeah, because
That way, if you want to go to those, the focus should be on the recommendations. And we obviously got those recommendations by going through the process and hearing from everybody and having a chance to meet with all of them. So I think you're right, put the important stuff up front.
We could just move those meeting summaries to the end prior to the appendices.
That was my thought originally when we were first talking about this. Put that towards the end. And I even am not opposed to putting the meeting summaries in as a link, so anybody who wants to read through it, they can do that. They don't necessarily have to see it as part of the report, other than to know that was the guidance that we took in order to come up with the other things that we did. And if we do that, that really squashes things quite a bit.
I think too, under prevention, early intervention, community-based alternatives, and our collaboration, planning, and engagement for a continuum of care, I think we can probably merge those two. Because I think some of the overlap is on about prevention, diversion, services, and then it goes back into, I think we get some of the same overlap and recommendations there.
Not only do I think that those things might be susceptible to being combined, I really think that those things need to be moved up in the order of presentation, because I really think that,
Yeah,
based upon the conversations we've had today, that doing overall planning that incorporates as many parts of the community as possible, as soon as possible, is the imperative, especially given the fact that we're losing things. So, to the degree we can make that happen, Laura, I think that would be really useful. The thing with regard to guns, Bridget, I don't want to lose that at all.
yeah.
I'm just trying to figure where the best place is to put it. Any thoughts?
I mean, I'm fine with it being a standalone. I just wanted to mention it. There is a whole other committee that's going to be working on addressing that, so I'm fine with us. We started this a while ago. We could just leave it as a recommendation. They can.
I'm going to ask Laura and Janine, do you know what, because I didn't get a chance to see anything other than just the headline for the news conference this morning. What's going to be the thrust of the county as it relates to this Department of Violence Prevention?
I think that the department is very much in its nascent stage at this time. So the announcement included information saying that the office would be created and that they are searching for someone to lead the office. And it sounds like from articles that there will be one individual leading it, and that in the future, at an indeterminate time, that there may be more individuals. But it will focus on violence prevention initiatives from a strategic standpoint. So it's a convening office.
So it seems to me that part of our recommendations ought to be to hook that up with what we're talking about here, particularly as it relates to gun violence.
I would recommend, just to follow up on that, I would recommend leaving that recommendation in so that you are a partner in that future initiative.
I really don't see removing any of the recommendations. I think they're all good.
We can maybe slide together.
Okay. Mhm. Okay.
The suggestions, wishes, and aspirational goals should probably be maybe where we put some of the things that the county council doesn't really have any control over.
Yeah.
This is just same place as, our recommendations of how we as leaders talk about young people in our community.
Okay.
When is this due by? What are we doing?
We were supposed to be done by the 31st.
We'll be close, very close.
Yeah, I
We'll
think.
be very close.
Okay. See, what time is it? if we're gonna do all of that, we probably need one more meeting.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Let's do it. Let's meet.
Yeah, meetings are my life. If you have a way to avoid meeting, you can probably.
No,
get
I
me
think
to
you're
something.
right.
Yeah,
Just not on a Friday before a holiday.
yeah. I don't know. If we're gonna try to get it done by the 31st, it'd have to be next week. I don't know if that's a doable thing or not.
Not next week.
Okay.
It's a very difficult week.
Um,
Can we do the week of June 1st?
So anything past the end of this month, we would need to reestablish that the body is still in existence. So just as a technicality, we'll have we would need another extension.
Well, Jen, we can, here, we will, we'll proceed
Facilitate.
without Jen.
Are you talking about next week?
Yeah, we're going back to next week.
Okay. And Jen, you're not available.
Every state project next week, so I have Wednesday morning, I'd have to be out of here by 10:30 to be in Medina. Tuesday, I could move anything. Thursday and Friday are shot for me.
Tuesday is likely not a good day because
We have council meetings, so.
What about
can't do
Wednesday morning? How early can we meet? 8 o'clock? Is that,
it has to be at least 8:30 because the building is not open. 9 would be preferred for
you got a meeting at 9?
technical purposes.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, I'd like Jen to be here. But Jen, you can't do Thursday, right?
Friday.
We're looking at Wednesday morning at 8:30.
8:30 would not be preferential because staff does not start until 8:30. So our technical staff,
8:45?
9 and I just leave.
9 o'clock start time would be preferred.
Fine, I
Is
have
that
to,
gonna work with you?
yeah, I have to be in Medina at 11:30, meet with the state. So if
Okay.
I'm out of here by 10:30, 10:15, I'm good.
Then we should be able
You can
to,
do a half-hour meeting.
Yep.
okay. We'll just work real hard between now and Wednesday at 9.
And then, just so we can get that agenda together, because we'll only have Tuesday to post it because of the Monday holiday, what are the agenda items?
Finalize report.
Finalize report,
Okay.
consolidate
Yeah.
report.
The only item.
I mean, we'll have the boilerplate items and then our finalized report.
Okay,
That'll be the agenda, okay?
perfect.
It'll be, that's what the meeting is for. The purpose of the meeting will be to finalize.
Judge Adrian, if you can just email it to me like you usually do on Tuesday, I can have it posted.
Okay. Okay. And we're looking at trying to get this done in an hour. Jen can make her dash to Medina.
Look, you can keep
We're
going
gonna get it
without me.
done in
I
an
will
hour.
say my piece early and,
Be back by 11 o'clock.
all right, so you and I are both.
10 o'clock it is, and we'll try to finish by 10. Okay. So any, any considerations that you have about where this should go, you gotta send it around to all of us as soon as possible. So that we can get it to Laura so that she can
If you're,
magic.
are you guys okay with some of the recommendations? I have notes in there for sections I'd like to trim out. Is everybody okay with that? Oh, okay, all right.
Yes.
That's what I think. Right now, there are working comments in the document as well. So if anyone can take a look at the one on the share drive, and I think if there's consensus amongst the group, maybe I feel slightly uncomfortable removing substantive material without it, okay?
Yeah,
But
me
if the
too.
members want to grant each other that authority, then that could be something for discussion. Because I think as we get closer to this deadline, you likely, I'm fine to make any adjustments as needed, but again, I don't want to touch substance.
Works for me.
Judge, I thought it was a good thing that we're doing, sending them emails like you're doing, and everybody is really saying, okay, let's do it. Well, I don't think we should go away from
Let
that.
me, if you let me
Put it
trim
on
the
you. I'm
fat,
putting
I'll
it on
trim the
you. That's
fat.
right. We-
I'm all for giving you full authority, Bridget.
Thank you, Judge.
I second that.
I love, that's music to my ears.
Okay. Okay. All right, I think that covers the other things that are under new business. Review and adopt the subcommittee conclusions, approve final report format. Any miscellaneous business needs to come to the attention of the body? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.